Thanks for having me. Hey, and welcome to If These Heels Could Talk. I'm Georgina with Solutions by Georgina.
And I don't think we did this in the last, but that's okay. And I'm Michelle Babette with Okay, you know what? Reboot. I'm Michelle with Bad Cat Digital. Thank you so much for joining us at If These Heels. Today we are talking about partnerships.
Well, we're talking about this awesome video that on my way here, while stuck at a stoplight, you sent over to me and said, "What do you think of this?" And it was one of those moments where I started watching the video once it was appropriate at the next stoplight. And I went, I did not realize I'd been waiting my whole life to hear something like this.
Yes.
It was just one of those moments where like the boxes kept getting checked. I'm like, this is how this gets done. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, we have to talk about this. We have to share this.
So here's what we're talking about, because you're being very
mysterious.
Okay. So by the time we actually publish this episode, it'll probably be moldy old news, because the way the news cycle works.
But in case you're like some of us who missed the news when it comes around the first cycle.
But last week, the Try Guys, who are internet influencers, very popular YouTubers,
millions and millions of followers.
Of followers. They're giants. Originally from BuzzFeed, it's like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they just announced that that one of their foursome is no longer with them.
Well, one of their partnership, their business partners,
and one of their partnership, who is known and kind of carved out a personal brand as a family man.
Which means multiple videos. They do a lot of videos where they try things.
Yes. And they do a lot of videos with their wives. Like 3 of them are married. One is gay. And they do a lot of videos with their wives, some with their kids. You know, it's like a thing, right? It's part of the Try Guys brand and part of this individual's brand to be kind of family man, you know, and he was cheating on his wife with an employee. Now, the relationship has been discussed as consensual, and no information has come out that it wasn't a consensual relationship. So that's not part of this.
Luckily, so we can have the conversation about consenting adults.
We can talk about power dynamics in workplace relationships between boss and subordinate in another episode. That's something else completely different. But what we're talking about today, when we talk about business partners, when they're no longer partners. When a business partner does something that actively undercuts your business's values, your brand, and puts you in a really vulnerable position.
Everything you've been working for.
Everything that you've collectively been working for. Yes. And puts you in a really vulnerable position. So that's kind of the meta conversation. So the practice and the story of what the Try Guys have done and what's kind of coming out now that it's been like a week and a half since the announcement, something like that. It's been a PR masterclass. They did everything very, very well. And subsequent to them doing everything really well, the apology, you know, the person at the heart of all of this is no longer a member of their organization.
And one of the first things they did actually was bring in legal teams, HR teams, and said, PR. We're too close to this. But
help us.
Yes, but help and guide us. But this is not acceptable.
They didn't rush into a public announcement, even though there were people on the internet. This was kind of the information that this relationship had started was crowdsourced. People on the internet was kind of like a rumor that was floating around. Yep. They didn't rush into anything. They really took their time to understand the legal implications of what they were doing, the HR implications of what they were doing, the brand implications of what they were doing and not doing.
Well, and even by the time they released this video, we're watching it like it happened over Labor Day, so we're watching it a month later.
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks later, and they had already taken multiple action steps.
And it wasn't just this video that they released. They released a statement. Then there was a podcast episode that was an hour and a half long.
Wow.
Then there was this video that was 5 minutes long that you might have seen get parodied on SNL.
By the way, it's worth watching. We'll have a link to it because body language. If you just turn off the volume to watch the body language on these people, they are partners who have been betrayed.
So the thing that works about their response is that it's real. It is measured. It is responsible. It's professional, but it's also emotional. It's also vulnerable. It's also, you can tell that people are angry, hurt, upset, frustrated, and just really, and like you said, betrayed.
Oh, I liked that they cared. Like that was the first thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, in the past, we've seen numerous circumstances like this. And what I have witnessed in public arenas like that is the partners rally around the person who's done this.
Right. Yep.
They've justified as acceptable behavior. Right. And then it's just like, and now how quickly can this person go out and give some public apology, which is such crap.
And then they donate a bunch of money to a cause.
Right. And then we pick up the rug and we just go swish, 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 swish. This didn't happen. And it always felt really wrong. And I've always felt like, wow, like that just, so many people were not authenticated. It was just so, I'm like, wow, another cover up, great, whatever. But to actually like see something of this caliber, I was just so appreciative. And I'm like, everybody was validated as having feelings and emotions and consequences. There are consequences for your actions.
And the thing that's awesome about this is that the consequences have been managed and mitigated. Nobody's getting quote unquote canceled.
No.
Because they're doing it in a way that honors their fandom. They are explaining it and sharing their humanity while they're talking about this. There's humans involved. There are children involved. There are families involved. There are countless individuals, not just the employee who was part of the relationship, but all their employees. How they handle this as leaders is incredibly important to their brand, but it's also incredibly important to their internal community and employee culture.
I really think as business owners and leaders, I think everybody should watch this video. I think it is an example.
Yes.
It is an example of the next level of leadership.
It's an example
this is what this looks
like. It's an example of this person surprised us too.
Yes.
And the buck stops here. So we're fixing it. We're taking responsibility for it. We're cleaning up what we can. We're moving on the best we can. And we hope you stick with us. And the thing that's awesome about it is a request. It's a request. We hope you stick with us. It's not a assumption that it will happen. They're not so overprotective of the brand that they're hiding a bunch of stuff.
Well, and I love the part where they're like, we've lost lots of money. We've had to go back and remove content. We've had to go back and remove merch. We have
things that were ready to go that we paid for that we can't use.
That are now back in the editing room, and we're cutting whole things are being edited.
This is a loss, but it's incredibly worth it because this does not keep with our values.
Right.
We're putting our money where our mouth is. We're putting our actions where we say they are. So the thing about this kind of concept of a business partner that isn't truly a partner. A partner doesn't do this. Whether that's a romantic partner or a business partner, any sort of partner in any sort of venture does not undercut the values of that venture with their actions. They don't go off and make unilateral decisions that undermine or push their own personal agenda over the partnership.
Over everybody else.
It
was a complete mow over.
Yeah. And that's not what a partner does. And so I just loved that's the conversation now. That we can have that conversation now because we're not having the same old tired conversation about how they didn't handle it right. And now the people of the internet go after the wife, they go after the girlfriend, all of a sudden it's harassment and canceling and bullying and trolling. And that's not what's happening here because it doesn't need to. The consequences have been in real life. They've been clear, we're focused and we've moved on. And we don't have this, like the people of the internet don't have this like schadenfreude kind of desire to take someone down because the consequences have been measured, real and clear.
And as I would totally agree with that, I've heard somebody in leadership talk about this once, but I've not seen it in action. So seeing this, I recognized supported what I had heard.
Right.
And I'll just give him credit. It was Dave Ramsey, and he specifically said, if any of his staff is, it's brought to his attention or anybody else's attention that they are cheating on their wives or husbands of that man, he does, it's in their contract, he terminates their employment. And he does that because he goes, if they can lie to the most important person that they've made a commitment to, he goes, I can't trust them to not lie to me, to my staff, to everybody else.
Interesting.
And I'd been like, okay, that's interesting.
I'm going to be on the fence about that as a blanket thing, because I think that part of the issue here wasn't just the affair. Part of the issue, I mean, the vast majority of it is that it's with an employee.
Oh, see, I don't know. I don't know. It was, in the circumstance, it was both.
Well, and morality clauses are very common when you're talking about representation, right? So if you're an influencer and you're representing a brand, morality clauses are very, very common. We're working on some influencer campaigns right now with one of our clients, and that this is a concern, you know, making sure that there's not profanity in the content. You know, is the brand, is the influencer's brand aligned with our brand? The morality clauses are a concern.
Well, and that's one of the things you brought up right away when we started talking about this, and we waited until we could hit record, as you brought up the fact, like, from a marketing perspective, influencers are definitely a thing.
Absolutely.
They're a useful tool within the toolbox.
And they're human people. So human people make choices and mistakes. And,
So but if you're helping, if a company comes to you and wants help with their marketing, and you're working on picking out influencers, obviously they're humans, but you are trying to make sure that, you know, it doesn't go against your company that you're representing, their values.
Part of the rub in that, and we'll maybe do a different podcast about this, but part of the rub in that is that brands, especially larger companies and consumer brands, are really used to controlling the entire message of their content. And the minute you start an influencer campaign, you've given up, or even a user-generated campaign, you've given up a measure of control over that content, over the message, over how it comes across. And you're kind of looking for the trend of it rather than each individual piece being kind of like perfectly on point. But the challenge is, and that's a big hurdle for a lot of brands to get over in sort of influencer marketing or user generated content. But when we think about this, when I think about as a leader, I own the company that I own alone.
Yes.
I don't have partners. But we do this together.
Yes.
And we've done this together for 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
Going on 4 years. Yeah.
And I think about, we had a conversation when we first started.
Yeah.
We worked with somebody who helped us set up the organization. And we had this conversation when we first started about the 5 Ds and how partnerships end.
Yes.
Do you remember what they were?
No, but I remember there's a podcast on our thing. Right.
Death.
No.
Divorce. Like if one of us were divorced our husbands, or we were to get divorced from each other.
Yep.
Disinterest.
Yes.
And I totally forgot the last one. Disease.
Disease. And then
meaning one of us was too ill to kind of continue moving on.
Yeah. Yes.
So we're so excited about this new partnership.
Ooh, we were super excited.
And
still excited.
We have to talk about how it's going to end.
Which is we won't lie to you. It was weird.
It was weird.
A weird emotional space.
It was a weird emotional space. But because of that, when my mom came to me and said, I want to start a quilt shop and I want to start a quilt shop with you, which is, I've dreamed of owning a quilt shop forever.
Let's just say it was not a lot of arm twisting.
This was not a lot of arm twisting.
I witnessed it from a distance and it was like this. Ooh, okay. Okay, maybe.
I can do that with my spare time. But when she came to me,
yes,
I had that conversation ringing in my ears because I was like, okay. So we sat down and talked about it, and I was like, there are implications to, because she lives in a different state than me.
Right.
So if we're going to partner in this business, there are implications to how we partner in this business, to the business setup, to how these are made. And I forced her to go talk to her financial planner.
Good.
I said, I need you to talk to somebody on your own about what's going to be the best for you.
Yeah.
And she said, well, and then, we don't really need to do it. I'm like, yes, we do.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, we do, especially because we're family. And I said, and she's like, well, I just kind of want this for this amount of time. And then, when I'm done, you can just kind of take it over. And I was like, okay,
pause.
I hear you. And I respect that and understand that. What about my brother? What responsibility do I have to my brother in this thing? Let's say it gets popular and it starts making money. What responsibility do I have to my brother in that scenario? And she went, oh, I didn't think about that. So this having conversations about how something ends at the beginning is really important, and I'm willing to bet that saved them in this scenario.
I was thinking that too. I was like, they obviously had Yes, they'd created a good partnership once that started taking off, and they had some good documents and conversations were had, because then they were able to bring those people back in and be like, help us. Yes, like
help us unravel this now. Yes. So we have that.
Yes.
So what happens? What are the signs? And because it's very shocking. But what are the signs? And I would say that some of the signs that your partner isn't really your partner.
Yeah.
Is if they're, if it feels like they're working at odds with your goals, like all of a sudden, like the goals that you had set or the goals that you guys stated or the communication that you've stated together is not matching the way that they're acting.
Yeah, I would definitely. And that can look like missed meetings. That can look like weird sales calls that, like, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Where people are like, we don't sell that. Like, we can't make that. Like, what?
Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be, I'm going to start this thing on the side. And all of a sudden, right. Like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Because we both have day-to-day businesses.
Right.
And they were a lot closer in their offerings when we started this.
Oh, yeah. Now we're.
And so we talked about boundaries with that. And we have several conversations about If These Heels as an entity and where does it want to go? What do we want to do with it? And we were both feeling, I think, last year that, that this could really like blow up and take off and do like some amazing things. That was at the
beginning. We were so excited.
But at the same time, our actions weren't matching that statement. And so when we got really real, we were like, neither one of us wants to put in that time or energy. We're putting that time of energy into our core businesses. We don't want to put it into this. So we're happy with what this is.
Yeah.
And when we have those honest conversations, they feel really like freeing instead of feeling like, well, I can't say this out loud, or I don't really want to say this, or I don't want to say that. So I would say that open communication and that kind of feeling of comfort, that lack of an uneasy feeling, that is a strong, healthy.
That's the sign that your partnership is continuing in a good direction. But yes, if you're all of a sudden apprehensive in having conversations, if you're all of a sudden thinking, well, why are they making those decisions? Why is
that's super weird?
Those are the sign. Like those are the signs.
Why did you meet with that person without me?
Right.
Why did you schedule that trip for when we were going to do this?
Right. It's like
all of those kinds of
something's
things.
off. I'll relate it over to the personal life. I had a girlfriend once who called me and she's like, okay, I got to put this app on my husband's phone. I need to track him. I think he's having an affair. Like she was going down. And I said, we talked about it. And in the end, we came to a different conclusion. I'm like, if you start to go down this road to try and prove something, I'm like, just recognize, like, you might, like, you're going to slightly become a different person.
Right.
And you're going to lose part, like, just, and I get where you're at. You want to,
but you're going to lose part
of
the high ground.
Your marriage is worth fighting for.
If you're going to really fight for this.
But if you're feeling this way, something else is going on in your marriage.
If you're going to be sneaky about how you're doing it, then you're going to lose some of the high ground.
Right. And I'm like, and if you're feeling this way about your partnership,
right,
something's going on within your partnership and you're not wrong. I'm like, whatever you're feeling isn't wrong.
Nope.
But you've got to decide how.
But there might be a different core issue. Like that may not be the core issue. That may be a symptom of something else.
Right. And she actually did choose, she actually chose some counseling for herself. Then they chose some marriage counseling. And I don't know if he was or wasn't. I just know that after all of that, they came to a place of having completely renegotiated their partnership.
Yeah.
And honestly, they have a pretty darn good marriage.
And sometimes that's what it takes, right? Like
every situation is different, but
we have different expectations for this now than we did at the beginning. And I would say the same would be true for Try Guys. They didn't set out, they were employees at another company. Mm-hmm. That company threw them together and said, make some stuff. And they did. And then they left with the IP, which, by the way, if you're ever wondering what happened to BuzzFeed, it's because they let their employees leave with the IP. But the point is that they left with the IP. They created their own company together. Mm-hmm. And this has been years in the making. We're not talking about 4 guys that just kind of randomly got together and built a YouTube channel. We're talking about 4 people who've spent the bulk of their like mid-20s and early 30s together, who've been in each other's weddings, watched each other have children. Yeah. I mean, this is years of partnership, friendship.
And that's why that video is so telling.
Right.
It just like I said, turn the volume off and just watch the body language. Like like the harm and the damage and the feelings, it's just so right there. It's so
present. And I
Yeah.
think that's, the SNL did a skit that kind of mocked that a little bit, which
it'd be easy to do.
I just didn't love.
You didn't love that one?
No, I didn't love it.
I
thought it felt a little off tone. Like, why are we talking about this? This isn't that big of a deal. But frankly, I think that it's a giant deal that a YouTube influencer, cheated with an employee. No, I don't think that's a big deal. But I do think that people who have power over other people having consequences for their actions in a public forum that can be dealt with professionally.
Yes.
And and consequences can happen without it being like a pitchfork and knife and tar and feather kind of situation, without it turning on the people who may have been impacted but weren't making active decisions. All of those things. I think that's a turning point. I think how this was handled,
it felt like a turning point.
Feels like a turning point, and it feels like a cultural turning point. And I think that it's really, I think that it's a big deal. And I think that it takes this concept. So we're able to have larger conversations around it. We're able to have larger conversations that are in depth about PR, about business partnerships and partnership betrayal. We're able to have these larger conversations because it is a turning point in how to do this. From a company perspective, from a brand perspective, from a personal perspective. And when we see the way that the general public and the internet as a whole has received this, I think it shows people that all those PR people who told you to make a real apology, like a real one, were freaking right. And they've been right for the last 20 years, and you haven't been listening to them. And you've been trying to mitigate it privately. You've been trying to protect something that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it just, I can't tell you how refreshing it was. It was just like, oh, good. We are not actually going to pretend like this didn't happen.
Right.
In a world, in a society that has been taught and trained how to pretend like something, you didn't really just see that. That didn't really happen.
Yeah, misdirection.
Let's look over here, and to actually be like, you totally saw that. This is what was happening. Here's what's going to be happening moving forward.
So I think
thank you.
I think about the contrast to something like what happened when, do you remember, I'm almost positive it was Delta, the airline that had the incident where the gentleman of color was beaten up on the plane and then removed from the plane.
Yep.
And then the CEO apology was like a non-apology. It was like one of those like
where he blamed the victim.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you've been. Blah,
it was
blah,
the
blah.
classic.
It was just the classic.
Yeah.
It was the classic. Sorry, not sorry kind of thing.
But we're a big company, and there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do about it, and we've,
we're
paying everybody to shut up, and everything's going to be fine, and look the other way, and don't forget to fly the friendly skies of Delta.
Yeah.
And the thing that kills me about this is that there is no acknowledgement that your brand is forever changed by the actions of the individuals that represent your brand. The individuals who represent your brand are employees. People will no longer be able to think about your brand without remembering that. Now, will it be everybody? No. Is it the sum total of people's experience with your brand? No. But your brand is created in conjunction with. You don't just build something. There's this misnomer among business owners that we build a brand and we craft and create it.
Like you have some control. Like you have all the control.
You don't. How people respond to it is part of what creates it, right? The user generation. And there is nowhere that's more prevalent than on the internet, because people can say whatever the heck they want.
And they're going to.
And some of them are going to lie. And some of them are going to say, because that's human nature. So people who represent your brand are and you train people to deal with customer service things and people. And I truly believe that everybody has in intense situations that the vast majority of people have the best interest at heart, but they don't understand what other people go through.
Yes.
And they don't understand their own biases, and they don't understand their own,
No, stuff happens.
But it doesn't excuse their behavior. Nope. And the thing that this showed is that in protecting their brand, the way that companies have in the past, in trying to protect their brand by sweeping stuff under the rug, they actually contribute to the tarnishment of that brand.
Yeah.
What the Try Guys have showed is that if you stick to the values that you state, which is, this is who we are, and we're going to respond to this in keeping with who we are, then your response actually contributes to the brand that you were trying to build. Yeah. Because you're not trying to protect something, you're trying to invite people to make it with you.
Yeah.
Well, and you're continuing to do that as it shifts.
Yes.
You cannot protect it from before. It is fundamentally changed already.
It's done.
It's done.
Done. Door
it's
closed.
Over.
That's done.
It's over. You can't unring the bell. So let's move forward, having known the bell rung. Let's move forward.
Yes.
And we invite you along. And if you decide to reject us, then that's just how it's gonna have to be.
Yeah. From a coaching perspective, it is exactly like life is.
Yes.
Life is. Stuff happens.
And people are people.
People are people.
People
life
make mistakes. Yes.
What's the gift and opportunity in this?
Right.
How do we take this and how do we adjust this so that it's a gift and opportunity for everybody? So like how do we make this as much a win-win?
And let's be real.
As possible.
I'm not gonna worry about these three guys. Like, they're great content generators. They do a really good job. They're part of if the Try Guys brand can never come back from this, I really truly believe that they will.
Oh,
but if they cannot,
I was not aware
those individuals will still be just fine. The people who work for them would be impacted more than they would if, and that is something that they acknowledge as well.
Yeah,
it was just so well done. So if you haven't, we'll
put it in the stuff.
Yeah, we'll put it. If you haven't been watching or paying attention to what is happening with the Try Guys, or you didn't know who the Try Guys were before, yeah. So if you are more than 45, then you should probably.
Yeah.
You should probably just look it up, because I swear, not only is this a PR masterclass, but I do think that this is a leadership masterclass as well.
Yeah.
And it is an understanding of that when we are betrayed as humans by our fellow humans.
Yes.
When our fellow humans make a mistake,
short.
We don't have to contribute to that mistake overall with our actions. We can stop, we can think, we can plan, and we can move something forward without rushing to some sort of knee-jerk reaction that doesn't serve anybody. So it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful.
So check it out. Thanks for joining us this week. It's been fun to chat with you, and we know you've learned a few things from this.
Yes. So beautiful out of the ugly.